Well, I don't know how many years on this earth I got left. I'm gonna get real weird with it.
All right, my beauties and bees, welcome back. Thank you so much for giving me a minute there. I got to my coffee and there was so little left in it that it was burned. So now I have a cup of like burned coffee. Ugh. So I got a cup of water instead to kind of hold me over. My throat's still from the burned coffee. Oh, I don't know if y'all know what that taste that comes into your throat. Oh, it's the worst. Anyway, welcome. Welcome back to the show. And we are about to get really weird with really weird with Noah's Ark, because apparently Noah was a Florida man. Who knew? Let me show you. Yeah, okay, so this is a channel called Old World Florida. We've been to Florida already today, because this was the Alaska episode too. But this is Old World Florida. It's one of these hidden history pages. The hidden history of Florida and the Old World, brought to you by the Florida Department of Magic with a K. Department of Magic. That's how you know it's not pretend magic like stage magic, but real magic like witchcraft. And they have a lot of videos covering a lot of topics about weird stuff in Florida. Including giant trees, Tampa Bay uncovered, underground city, and Garden of Eden. Do my Tampa followers know that they're in the Garden of Eden? Do you all realize that you are in Eden right now? Florida's World Fair. Oh, we got some Jordan B. Peterson to start things off 2 years ago for male enhancement. Europeans in ancient Florida. Astrology of Florida. The Miami Circle. We might have to explore that. I don't know. That could be interesting. Yeah. Extreme Florida man fights sea creature. Oh boy. Ancient Israelites of Florida, the Florida Everglades. But recently they put out this video, which is about Noah's Ark. 100% proof, it says. 100% proof that Noah's Ark departed from the Americas, specifically Florida. Northern Florida, but Florida nonetheless. Let's dig in, Hive.
But serious biblical archaeologists,
No.
in addition to the flood described in the Bible, there are over 200 ancient cultures around the world which retain some version of a flood myth. Swiss psychologist Carl Jung believed that a memory of the flood was stored inside the mind of every man and woman on Earth.
Yeah, but Jung was kind of I mean, if you want to, Jung has some good ideas. But, I mean, that we have a folk memory of, or not folk memory, what would you call it, like an epigenetic memory of floods? Why not? I mean, surely we've all had ancestors at one point or another that experienced a catastrophic flood.
Via the collective unconscious. The vast majority of these flood myths.
All biblical archaeology is serious. Even you can ask Ron Wyatt.
Closely mirror the story of Noah's Ark. Most people have been taught where Noah's Ark is said to have.
Right, exactly. This person's like pagan or whatever because they're using the magic with the K, doing Bible stuff. I wish that if he's going to do this, that he could at least, instead of saying Noah, say Utnapishtim, because that's the oldest version of the story, right? Noah is the Christian name for the character that was rewritten into their myths. So the oldest version should be the one that we go with, right? With as far as the name and stuff. So let's go with Utnapishtim instead of Noah. Makes sense with all the math. Noah wouldn't have to carry much food. I live off lettuce and mimosa I think it's supposed to be
landed.
Spriggs.
But have you ever wondered where Noah's Ark actually departed from? The book of Genesis tells us that the ark came to rest in the mountains of Ararat.
I'm loving the Gregorian stuff you got going in the background here, Florida man. I love it.
Near the borders of modern-day Turkey, Armenia, and Iraq. But nowhere is it specified in the Bible where the ark was constructed, nor where it was launched. Since
Florida. It was launched in Florida, don't you know?
Noah's Ark landed in Eurasia, many people have foolishly assumed that it must have launched from that same continent, entirely discounting the Western Hemisphere. Others have ignorantly assumed that the world was entirely reshaped by the flood, so there is no point in searching anywhere. However, the archaeological...
I think that's biblical that the ark, or that the world changed from after Noah's flood, right? That the world was reshaped. That's canon. As a matter of fact, as far as young Earth creationists go, it's actually required for their explanation of why the continents are where they are and all that. That I believe the way that it's presented is that there was one landmass. You're not a Tampanian, Sumami. You're an Edenian, a person from Eden. I don't know. You live in an Eden. Congratulations. You are Eve, like 6.0.
and anthropological evidence, along with the time frame given in the book of Genesis, clearly indicate otherwise. For starters,
I like how they put this big spoiler on the front. Like, what the fuck is that?
The Bible tells us that Noah constructed the ark out of gopherwood, and gopherwood cannot be found in Eurasia or Africa. Gopherwood only grows in Florida, along the state line with Georgia.
Oh goodness, yes, this is true. The fact that it's called gopherwood it's calling it gopherwood is a little bit of a play on words, I guess. It's a plant called here. Actually, you know what? I'll just bring it right over. Torreya taxifolia, commonly known as the Florida torreya or stinking cedar, but also sometimes as the Florida nutmeg or gopher wood. So this is people ad hocing the name gopher wood onto this plant. And as far as its applications, it's rare and endangered, right? There aren't very many of them left. But there's, like, as far as building materials, only very small things could be made with it, like fence posts and stuff. It's a fir tree, but it grows about, they can go pretty big, like 30 feet, but like not enough for heavy construction material. And it's not necessarily strong enough for heavy construction material either. And it has a cedary smell. That's why it's sometimes called, cedar. But or stinking cedar. It's mostly like if people harvested it, and even in shipbuilding, they had it there and did not use it. They used it for fuel to fuel the engines in their steamships, but they did not use it to build anything. If it was actually good building material, I'm gonna press X to doubt on that one. All right. Go for wood. Yeah, that's what Yahweh was saying. He told Noah to go for wood, and people thought he said go for wood. Edenite. There you go. Yeah, Sumami the Edenite. That sounds like a comic book. I want it. What native atheists have that you want? I prefer the magic bus. I don't know.
Believe it or not,
sorry.
the word gopher itself is exclusive to ancient Hebrew and the Muskogee language, spoken by
this is big part of this guy's grift, right? He's the Muskogee language, and is a derivative of the ancient Israeli languages.
Indians of Florida. Then there is the fact that many of the animals believed to have been transported by Noah's Ark, which today inhabit Eurasia and Africa, actually originated in the Americas. Take, for example, the horse, zebra...
Okay, hold on. So the first horse evolved in North America 55 million years ago. This is true. And horses migrated across Beringia into the Old World, and unfortunately they died out at the end of the Pleistocene. Same as almost all the megafauna of North America. The species, the megafauna that live in North America now, like in the northern parts and stuff, were actually the smaller southern relatives of the species that lived up there. But unfortunately, no horses made it through.
Camel, cheetah, tapir, and monkey.
We'll get into
Some
those.
of these animals disappeared entirely from the archaeological record of prehistoric America, only to reappear in Eurasia and Africa a mere few thousand years ago, completely in line.
That is not true. Horses and zebras, all these animals have a robust evolutionary history over the last, I don't know, few tens of thousands of years. The equids did not just move to the Eurasian continent 4,000 years ago. We have cave paintings in Africa with zebras and asses. We have cave paintings in Europe of wild horses that are, 30,000+ years old. What the hell are you talking about? Archaeological evidence of horse domestication dates from 4000 BC in the Eurasian stuff. Yeah, because this is a misrepresentation of the information, right? Because you talk about domestication of the horses. Yeah, 4000 BC, that's it. That really is it. But it does not mean horses didn't appear in Eurasia until then, or in Africa until then. They've been there. There were non-domesticated species of horses, like asses and zebra.
The story of Noah's Ark. It is from that point onward that the recorded history of civilization uncoincidentally begins, or rather, picks up.
No, zebras did not come from the Americas. Zebras evolved in Africa from a more primitive horse ancestor that came from North America. But you're talking millions of years ago, right? The connection between North America and in Asia, for most of history, they've been two connected continents. No two continents have been more married than North America and Asia. That's why they share so much of their biological organisms, right? That's why they share so much faunal crossover, because they have been Eurasia and North America were basically one landmass for most of since Pangea, I want to say, yeah, since Pangea. So the equid line originated on the North American side, but it definitely migrated to Eurasia and into Africa after that, well before there was a species that we would call human on the face of the earth, right? Zebras were well established in Africa before, or by the time like Australopiths came around, right? And there were other equid or similarly related organisms as well.
Again, even mainstream historians and secular archaeologists now concede that the horse, the wheel, the arts, sciences, and agricultural civilization as a whole seemingly appeared out of nowhere near the Black Sea in a semi-nomadic state long before.
And he just skips over it saying 10,000 years ago instead of the 6,000 years ago that they generally say.
Before they were permanently introduced to the lands today known as.
I do like this map though. I really do. We got goats. Now this only shows the Middle East, or the Mesopotamian, I guess, Fertile Crescent region of it, right? But there was a similar activity going on in China and a bit later in Central America with domestication as well. But I really like this. I'd like to see one like this of the other areas too, because you got cattle up in here in ancient Anatolia with wheat and rye. You got sheep up here. You got the Pontic Mountains. You got pigs, sheep, goats. Really cool. Yeah, Mesopotamia, cattle, sheep, goats. Goats down here, and like down here is the land of Canaan. I guess that's more down here. Oh, that's the Sinai Peninsula. You kind of know where we're at. Yeah, anyway.
Mesopotamia.
I'm done fangirling over the map, sorry. Is the host implying horses taught humans written language? I hope so. Or am I the host?
Yeah. In addition to anomalous boat-shaped formations located in the mountains of Ararat, evidence for the landing spot of Noah's Ark in Asia Minor includes the Arzap Drogestones, a collection of ancient megalithic ship anchors consistent with a 500-foot boat. The only place on Earth.
The Ark was not a boat. The Ark was a box with cubed dimensions, with exactly cubed dimensions. So it was literally a box tumbling in the sea.
That stone anchors of this magnitude can be found by the thousands is Florida. It will be shown in this presentation, through these evidences and many others, that Noah's Ark was indeed constructed in the state of Florida, and therefrom departed to Eurasia. The views expressed in this video do not necessarily reflect my own. Now enjoy.
Welcome to Florida, baby.
Oh, that was just the intro. 4-minute intro. Damn. We're going to be out a long time on this one, guys.
Part 1. Gopherwood. The first factor to address when seriously approaching the construction of Noah's Ark would have to be the material from which it was constructed. Genesis chapter 6, verse 14 reads as follows, quote, "Make thee an ark of gopherwood. Rooms shalt thou make in the ark, and shalt pitch it within and without with pitch." End quote. The mysterious gopherwood being...
Yeah, gopher wood is basically, it's like unobtainium. It's like vibranium. It's like kryptonite. It's like adamantium. It's this mystical. It's mithril. I don't care whatever fantasy world that you're part of. It's what's the Star Wars Beskar? It's Beskar. It's a magical substance that you can make something out of that makes it basically able to survive an apocalypse, right? If you make yourself a box out of this adamantium, wood, Beskar, mithril stuff, you will be safe from the flood, says God to Noah. So build it out of this. And he does that. But they're going to claim, well...
being referred to has never since been identified in Eurasia, indicating it must have been harvested in some other continent or lost to the flood altogether. The English term gopherwood is a direct transliteration of the Hebrew word gopher or kopher, used only a single time in the entire Bible. In the absence of such a wood, some scholars have defined the word to simply mean pitched wood.
Remember that channel we had that said it was like they went to North America and cut down giant sequoias and brought them back to build the temple, or to build the temple in Israel
Of any type.
Like I had Megan with me when we heard that. Megan from Digital Hammurabi.
Although, this definition would render God's separate instructions to pitch the ark a bit redundant. Others believe the Hebrew word gopher is one and the same with the English words.
He does not look 700 years old. There's no way that cartoon character is supposed to represent a 700-year-old man hammering away on that. The Hebrew word kofar is a masculine noun that means cover. It can have multiple meanings, including village, a literal meaning referring to a village that is covered. Bitumen, a specific meaning referring to bitumen that is used for coating. Henna plant, a specific meaning referring to a henna plant that is used for dyeing. Redemption price, a figurative meaning referring to a redemption price bribe campfire, pitch, ransom, satisfaction, sum of money, or village. In the Bible, copper is used to refer to pitch used to seal Noah's Ark. The basic meaning of copper in this context is covering. So covering wood. Okay.
Cover, coffer, and coffin, meaning a covering of wood, because it is generally thought that the ark was covered over, almost like a submarine, to withstand the possibility of waves cresting over its bow. Genesis chapter 6, verse 16 reads as follows, quote, "A window shalt thou make to the ark, and in a cubit shalt thou finish it above, and the door of the ark shalt thou set in the side thereof, with lower, second, and third stories shalt thou make it." End quote. If we are to take that verse,
the Bible says, why aren't they using the source material instead of the fanfic, right? Why aren't they reading Gilgamesh so we can learn how Utnapishtim built his ark? So Noah was Native American. Apparently all people are Native American, according to this mythology. Like, people originated in North America. Tampa was the Garden of Eden.
As the evidence that the ark,
all humanity starts in Florida here in this mythology.
Had a roof. The covering of the ark with covering wood would also seem a bit redundant. The most prevalent and likely opinion held by biblical scholars is that the identity of Gopherwood was simply lost to time or devastation from the flood. Such would certainly be the case if the ark had indeed drifted from the Americas to Eurasia. This would remain a mystery until the rediscovery and European settlement of the Americas. Not many people are aware that there is an endangered tree native to Florida and South Georgia, which has long been known as Gopherwood.
Its modern name is Gopherwood. It's a modern name that people have decided to name it post hoc.
In his book entitled In the Beginning, Florida's 1936 Republican candidate for governor, L.V. Edison Callaway, not only asserted that Florida was the original Garden of Eden, due to the presence of Earth's only equal four-headed river system, and an idea.
What are you talking about? Okay, so the Pison River is the Chattahoochee. Fish Pond Creek River is the Hittackill River. The Euphrates River is Spring Creek River. The Junon River is the Flint River. Okay.
Ideal climate.
Like what?
But also that Noah's Ark had therefrom been constructed out of.
I like that they put pasties on Eve. Give her some pasties.
Local wood known as Gopherwood, which only grows along that same four-headed river system in Florida's Apalachicola River Valley. The following is an interview with Callaway, conducted in 1972 by Diane Hoffman for WFSU.
The key to Eden is Gopherwood.
All right, now we're going to get into some of this guy's mythology, this Callaway guy. And he's a creationist author. I wonder if Hovind knows how close he is to the actual Garden of Eden down there in Alabama.
The Torreya evergreen. Make thee an ark of gopherwood, said the Lord to Noah, and gopherwood grows only in this park. The tree produces a buoyant wood that would be suitable for the building of an ark.
The gopherwood is not suitable for construction of anything of that size. It's not. If it was a good shipbuilding material, they would have been making ships out of it during the Age of Exploration. They didn't. They literally used it as fuel and made their ships out of other stuff because it was useful as fuel to burn, but not so much for building.
Logs of petrified gopherwood which Callaway discovered here, he said, were sawed off good and smooth, just like a chainsaw would have done.
The tree life from Chattahoochee to...
Truth, Noah had a chainsaw. Y'all.
Bristol is the largest of any other area in the world. The Bible names 28 trees. The best authority on earth have identified 27 of them here, and many more, including the Gopherwood tree. Noah built the ark out of Gopherwood, which...
He's got that like boss hog accent. I mean, as much as I think what he's saying is nonsense and BS, I could listen to him tell stories in that accent for hours.
God selected himself for him to build it out of.
Is this the only place that you know of?
This is the only place on this earth where it has ever grown. It's the most peculiar wood on earth. You can take a piece of it the size of this match when it's green. You can't break it. You can twist it and turn it. It's the lightest wood on earth.
It is not the lightest wood on earth. It is the rarest wood in North America, though. Let's see. I still have that pulled up here. Let's see what this says about it. Taxonomy and naming, type, species, and genus. Description, technical description. Evergreen tree that may reach a height of 59 feet with a 31-inch diameter trunk. That's 80 centimeters diameter and 18 meters tall. Although it typically grew 30 to 39 feet, that's 9 to 12 meters tall, and 30 to 50 centimeters or 12 to 20 inches in diameter. And most stands today are composed of immature trees of less than 3 meters, 9.8 feet tall. The crown is open and conical in overall shape and with whorled branches. These branches are spreading to slightly drooping. The bark of 2-year-old branches are colored greenish yellow, yellowish green. I said that backwards. Yellowish brown or gray. On mature trees, the bark is only about 0.5 inches. That's 1.3 centimeters thick, and is irregularly divided into shallow fissures. The stiff needle-like leaves are sharp to the touch and arranged in 2 ranks on the branches. So you can see them right here. The leaves are glossy. Okay, I want to hear more about the wood, though. The leaves have a unpleasant, strong, pungent, resinous odor when crushed. Subdeciduous. Okay. With separate male and female plants that may, however, include branches bearing cones of the opposite sex. So these are non-binary trees. Sweet. Male cones appear in the axial of the needles of the from the prior year, while female, okay, that's not talking about the wood either. Mature about 18 months. Do I want to hear about the wood? There's like hardly anything here about the wood because this isn't a construction plant. Species within the Torreya genus are all adapted to establish and grow slowly as sub-canopy woody plants in a forest habitat of moderately dense shade. In this way, the leaf structure and growth habit resemble species of yew in the yew genus Taxus, which is a close relative. So they're close relatives of the yew tree. Stems will lean in very shady conditions. Okay. Ecological niche, distribution, wild population. Prehistoric distribution. So these used to be a lot wider spread. It's like, oh, that's the only place they've ever grown. They used to grow all over North America. I mean, yeah, the northern hemisphere. But today, the location entails the entirety of the native range of the Torreya taxifolia, thus making it paleo-endemic. Yeah, there was even species in California, on the California coast, but so his claim that it was the only place it ever grew is not true, and that's cited. Yeah. All right. So anyway, back to the video. Let's hear what else he has to say.
I have had its fibers, its structure, its every phase of it chemically analyzed. There's no other wood on earth like it. It's the lightest. And Noah built the ark out of wood not very far from where you and I are sitting here at Torrey State Park. It was loaded, and then it floated 5 months and landed on Mount Ararat, where we know definitely that it's now embedded in the ice.
What ice on Mount Ararat? I think the mountain's pretty well explored. I don't think there's any ice on it. What's he talking about? Is there a glacier on Ararat? I don't think so.
The idea or the notion or the belief that the Garden of Eden was somewhere else or over in Europe or in Africa or someplace over there, the Western Hemisphere was unknown. They did not know that the continent existed west of the Atlantic Ocean. Therefore, they couldn't search this continent along with the others to find the River of Four Heads and these other great natural monuments which the Bible said was related to the Garden of Eden.
I guess it does have a snow cap. It's glaciated. Yeah, I pulled it up on the map here, so I do see it's snow capped. Definitely. And I'm assuming he's saying it's buried some. Oh, is that it right there? That must be it. I think that's the ark. Right?
Came my pleasure and my responsibility and my duty to search the North American continent and definitely point out the same bare natural monuments that the Bible relates to.
Through no fault of his own, Calloway surprisingly made zero mention of the etymology for Gopherwood in his 1966 book. Believe it or not, the English word gopher actually comes from the Muskogee language, spoken by the Indians of Florida.
Okay.
The Muskogee word was used as the name for the gopher tortoise and related to the Choctaw word kofasa, meaning a hollow or excavation, either due to the fact that
And that's fine. This is all fine. No problem with this etymology.
they dig extensive burrows or that their shell is hollow. The rodent gopher likely received its name due to the fact that it also burrows. The fact that the word gopher is exclusive to ancient Hebrew and native Floridian languages,
with different meanings. One, the Muskogee word meaning burrowing, and the Hebrew word kofar, which means to cover. Not that's not an etymological alignment.
on its own, ought to serve as a nail in the coffin for the Levantine-centric propaganda that most of us learned in Sunday school. Seminole Indians of Florida even used the word gopher as a title and family name.
He's talking about the NAMI site now, which we know was staged by the Hong Kong team.
It's worth noting that many prominent Seminole Indians had other Hebrew names like Ahaya, Bolek, Moses, Abraham, Jacob, Elijah.
Show me proof that any of these names existed in pre-contact North America among any people groups.
Adam, Samuel, Isaac, Miko, Benjamin, and even Noah.
There's somebody named You're telling me there was a Seminole Indian named Benjamin? Well, I guess Seminole's not. So that's the thing about Seminoles, aren't even like a ancient tribe or anything. The Seminoles were made up of a coalition of scattered people from destroyed nations, from conquered nations that took refuge in Florida, all the way from North Carolina. I think there were lineages from across the South and the Caribbean that all contributed to what we call a Seminole Indian, and I believe they had African slave ancestry as well. So the Seminoles aren't an ancient people. The Seminoles were I don't know how you describe it, like a refugee people, like eking out an existence in northern coastal Florida.
Let it be known that Christopher Columbus himself noticed Hebrew words being used by Native Americans in the 15th century, as did James Robert Adair,
Do you want to believe what Christopher Columbus says about anything?
who lived
Dude saw mermaids, you know that, right? He talked about them. He talked extensively about his experience with mermaids. Just gonna throw that out there.
among tribes of the American Southeast from 1735 to 1775, and even married a member. Linguistic links were also noted by numerous Jewish settlers and rabbis in colonial America. If you'd like to take a deep dive on the hidden Jewish history of Florida and ancient America,
I gotta show this to Dapper and see what he thinks, but to me this seems like linguistic pareidolia. I mean, just looking at them, at the comparisons between the languages.
go check out my video of that title. Here are just a few examples. The word Miami, which roughly translates to people of the water, in the languages of 3 separate American Indian groups, spreading from Ohio to Florida, holds a nearly identical meaning in Hebrew. The Hebrew words ish and ishto, meaning man and woman, have the exact same meaning as the native Floridian words ish and ishto, which some tribes pronounced as iste. There must also be a link between
Oh, we got Ishtar now. Ishtar.
the ancient Semitic deity Ishtar and the Native American deity Ishtaholo. Biblical Hebrew had no exact word for ocean, so Israelites adopted the Greek word okeanos, from which we get the root word oki and the English word ocean with a C. It should not surprise us to find that the native Floridian root word of oki
So that you just acknowledged that it was a Greek word, not a Hebrew word. And now you're reverse engineering it. The pre-flood Floridians speak Greek or ancient Hebrew, I wonder.
as found in Lake Okeechobee, translates to water in the Muskogee language. Thus we can see a link between the ancient Greek deity Okeanos and the Native American deity Okeus. The word for winter,
Okius.
Korah, is the same in both Hebrew and Native Floridian. Words similar
You keep saying native Floridian. You know how many different tribes there were in Florida, my dude? You know how big Florida is? You know how many different cultures existed in Florida over thousands of years that people have lived there? Tens of thousands of years that people have lived in Florida. Do you know how many robust and diverse cultures with history and language of their own exist within the land that we now call Florida? Jesus.
to the Hebrew Ararat were even used by American Indians to describe the tallest mountains in the area. Take, for example, Mount Ararat in Virginia, known to the natives as Rat Rat Rat. The list of Hebrew words
It's known as rat, 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 and you think that's the same word. Can't make this stuff up, folks.
used by Native Americans goes on and on and on. It suffices to say that the word gopher has been in America all along. Florida's Gopherwood was first taxonomically cataloged in 1833 by Hardy Bryan Croom, a relative of my good friend Jeffrey Croom, near the Apalachicola River. Croom named
Right, it was recently discovered and named, right? So you're acknowledging that it was named in modern times as Gopherwood, right? You're acknowledging that, right? That's a modern name given to it because people didn't know about it before that, at least not modern science. There wasn't any classification or name for it. Stinking cedar. You're just leaning into the Gopherwood because it fits the story you're trying to build.
it Torreya taxifolia, after Dr. John Torrey, the first person to confirm that it was a
Right? It doesn't make any sense, Ember. Did the Native Americans survive the flood and stay in Florida? So, of all places that survived the flood, Florida? Florida's not even going to survive climate change, let alone a global flood.
distinct species. How or when Florida's Gopherwood first officially received its name is unknown, but it may have been used as a deterrent against gophers and other rodents. The Florida Gopherwood tree is well known for its
That sounds most likely. Because cedar, it's called stinking cedar. and cedar and other wood, similar pungent woods, or aromatic woods, I guess you'd say. I don't necessarily call cedar pungent. Some trees are pungent. But being used to create like boxes and stuff to keep rodents out. And the rodents that you're talking about, gophers, sure.
Very distinct smell, which earned it the nickname of stinking cedar. It is a well-known fact that strong-smelling woods, such as cedar, are used to affect
Chitimacha and Huma tribe here. Okay, cool, PC. Chitimacha tribe is the only Louisiana tribe to retain a portion of its ancestral land. Well, that's good. I thought only Noah and his family survived the flood, right, Native Atheists? This is getting very convoluted. From slaves who fled to Florida, yes. Yeah. But, because when they first started establishing like plantation lands in the South, right, they used Native American slaves before the slave trade really took off. Once the tobacco, I think it was tobacco. It was tobacco before cotton, right? Once the tobacco industry took, so they started off with sugarcane, but sugarcane grew in the Caribbean. What they grew in the South first was the tobacco. Then cotton became a key industry. I'm trying to remember it all, but yeah. I like how he's using Chat GPT answers to make his argument, though.
actively repel gophers, and Florida gopherwood is said to have an even stronger scent than cedar. As a matter of fact, gophers are native to North and Central America, but found nowhere else in the world. Let it be known that Florida is...
But did you see that map that said they weren't found in Florida, though? Look at that. No gophers in Florida. What's up with that?
But found nowhere else in the world. Let it be known that Florida is also the primary habitat for the gopher apple, gopher tortoise,
Okay.
gopher beetle,
Sure.
and gopher fly.
Okay.
All
I'm here
of
for
which
it.
are endemic to the southeasternmost United States.
Okay. Cool. So they survived the flood there too, huh? Did they survive the flood in Florida? Did gopher tortoises, did they eke out an existence? Did they build a subterranean underground network of tunnels that protected them from the flood water? How did this work? Since they're still endemic to the area, how did it work?
Part 2. Animals on the Ark.
Ooh, here we go. This is
Now
where
that we
Bree's gonna
have
have fun.
identified the material from which the Ark was constructed, the next component necessary...
Correct, Ember, but not the gopher. The gopher is not from Florida because they generally like higher elevations where they can dig without running into groundwater.
to show that Noah's Ark could have departed from Florida to Eurasia would have to be the animals which it contained.
Oh, here we go.
As mentioned earlier, the archaeological record shows that the horse, turtle...
Okay.
As mentioned earlier, the archaeological record shows that the horse...
Okay, the horse 55 million years ago, right? And its migration to Asia was also millions of years ago. Please keep that in mind.
Turtle...
When turtles evolved, well, sea turtles specifically, because if you look right here, it says the earliest known sea turtles fossils. Now, sea turtles are known from, as like a lot of Mesozoic sea creatures are known from the region that was called the Western Interior Seaway. The Western Interior Seaway is where we find things like plesiosaurs, ichthyosaurs, mosasaurs, yes, and sea turtles, and sharks, and corals. Yes, sea turtles, mate.
Zebra...
And the zebra here, I just want to make sure that we understand that he's ad hocing zebra on here too, because zebra and horse have the same ancestry coming from North America and have about the same time frame. it even says here the earliest members of Equus, the genus which includes zebras and horses and asses, dates back 54 million years. Yeah, so it's given the same answer twice. Just he's saying horses and then zebra to make it seem like, oh, there's more than that. Zebras, there were no zebras in North America ever, right? A common ancestor, the Hagerman's horse, was not the modern zebra. Zebras have genetics. All equids have genetics for certain body stripes, right?
Camel, cheetah.
Camels are from North America, right? Let me go.
Shows that the horse, turtle, zebra, camel.
All right, camel. Yes, the camel family originated in North America. That's why we have, and again, we're talking camelids, not like modern camels, not like dromedaries and Bactrian camels. Talking a lot of ancient camels. Camels used to be fill a niche of everything from like small antelope-sized camels to giant elephant-sized camels. Okay, they were, or I shouldn't say elephant-sized, maybe giraffe-sized would be better, but they were a lot heavier than a giraffe, somewhere between the size of a giraffe and a rhino. But they were big. They were gigantic camels. And there were little bitty ones that were like gazelle-sized. And then some of them went south when the isthmus closed between North and South America and led us to our modern-day alpacas and llamas. But they did go extinct in North America.
Cheetah.
All right. Now, this is just straight-up misinformation here. Okay. What we call the American cheetah, Micriotics, is not the same species as the cheetahs that live in Africa today. The oldest cheetah fossils even says right here, the oldest cheetah fossils are from eastern and southeastern Africa, but fossils of American cheetah have been found in North America, which is a different species that filled the same niche and may have been closely related to cheetahs and pumas, right? But it's not the same species. Around 100,000 years ago, cheetahs migrated from North America to Asia and Europe and Africa across the Bering Land Bridge.
Tapir.
All right. Now, tapirs first appeared in North America during the late Miocene. The oldest known tapir fossils species is Tapirus webbi. Now, during the Miocene, Asia and North America were connected over and over again during this time period.
Monkey. And
all right, here, monkey. Now, this is really stretching it because when you talk about monkeys, this is not saying monkeys, it's saying primates. Primates originated in North America. Surprise! Yeah, they were little bitty, like tree shrew and tarsier sized primates. They weren't monkeys. They were adapiforms, and Plesiadapis came from North America. That's one of the earliest primates. But no, monkeys did not come from North America. Monkeys came around well after the North American primates were extinct. Like, what? Even the ones that live in South America didn't come from North America. They came from Africa.
many other species all had their official genesis in the Americas.
What do you mean official genesis? The speciation events that occurred, that some species evolved in the Western Interior Seaway, that a lot of animals that spanned the Mammoth Steppe that ranged from Nova Scotia to Great Britain. That was just the habitat of all these large browsing animals. The Mammoth Steppe stretched really far.
However, some of these animals disappeared entirely from prehistoric America, only to reappear in Eurasia and Africa a mere few thousand years ago. Completely.
No. There's a fossil record of all the species that you just covered going back millions of years in Eurasia. They didn't suddenly appear in Eurasia within modern times or within historic times.
In line with the story of Noah's Ark. Let us take, for example, the horse, as it is perhaps the best indicator of mankind's technological.
do love me some horses. Let's do it.
Advancement. Not many people are aware that the horse was present in the southeast United States since the Eocene epoch, or roughly 55 million years ago.
No, not roughly 50. Jesus, 55 million years ago is right after the dinosaurs died. I guess there could have been little. It would have been a common ancestor of horses and tapirs that existed during this time frame. Not like modern horses that would have like multiple toes. And
the archaeological records show that the horse entirely disappeared from America at the end of the Ice Age, only to suddenly...
It's so weird to say at the end of the Ice Age, at the end of the last glacial maximum, right? The Ice Age wasn't just like one event. It was multiple events over millions of years. But the last glacial maximum, because we're technically still in the Ice Age now. As long as there's ice on the poles, we're in an Ice Age.
Reappear in Eurasia, specifically near the Black Sea, at a state of near domestication.
They did not just reappear. What are you talking about? No, that's not what happened. They did not reappear in North America. They migrated to North America, they did not reappear in Asia. They domesticated. They existed for millions of years. We have, again, cave paintings and bones and middens from all around the world, or all around the steppes of Asia and Europe, that shows that ancient people had a staple diet of horses for hundreds of thousands of years. What are you talking about? They suddenly reappeared in domesticated form in Europe. No.
Only 6,000 years ago.
What the hell? Stop being weird. That's not true. They did not just appear like this. They did die out in North America at the end of the last Ice Age, and then they continued to thrive in Eurasia and Africa, just basically until modern times, because we still have like the Peralski horse, zebras, and wild asses. So they're still there. There's a straight lineage of non-domesticated horses that you can see. Jesus.
It is today quite common for amateurs and hobbyists to find the remains of prehistoric horses all across Florida.
Yeah? It is. I don't see what the point of that... I don't see what kind of point you're making here. Besides just giving time frames that just don't match up with what you're talking about. 2.2 to 10,000 years ago. You're talking about a flood that was 6,000 years ago.
This brings us to another great...
How come you didn't cover these titties up with pasties? She's got her whole cooter out, too. You just like letting it fly.
...proponent for the Garden of Eden in America theory. In his 1901 book entitled The Garden of Eden and the Flood, Methodist bishop and Confederate superintendent John C. Keener not only argued that the Southeast United...
Confederate superintendent. This was the religious leader of the Confederate nation. And he wanted to tell everybody that the Garden of Eden was in Dixie. Yeah.
United States was the Garden of Eden, but also that Noah's Ark had departed from there, as evidenced by the fossilized remains of prehistoric animals from South Carolina to Florida. Quote, "Wherever Eden was originally planted, it is now certain that in America are found fossilized remains, far more varied and extensive than have as yet been discovered in either Europe, Asia, or Africa."
I'm going to stop the quote right there just to say, oh, thank you. Yeah, I got in pigtails today. I felt cute. That is to say, at this time, maybe they hadn't found horses and stuff, and I don't even... That's not even true. What this guy's saying here isn't even true. They had found fossilized horse species, and by the 1860s, there were many well-known species of ancient horses in Africa and in Asia and Europe. You can actually go... I mean, and again, I gesture like wildly at the cave paintings in Southern Europe. It's like, dude, they had horses here way, way, way before this flood was supposed to have happened, dude. Dude, pay attention. Are you listening, dude? Ugh.
And that they indicate a long, undisturbed period of production before the flood. The enormous cemetery of marine and land animals in South Carolina tells its own story. The question as to where the ark grounded may be considered as correctly settled, Mount Ararat in Armenia, but the yet more interesting one, as to whence the ark took its departure, as still open, and to its solution we contribute this volume, presenting many important facts which cannot be set aside by any fair-minded.
Sumami, I need your allegiance here. I need you to see if you can build an ark in Florida using only Bronze Age tools, and it has to be out of this stinking cedar. So you are going to stink, but it's a sacrifice I'm willing to make.
Person. Meanwhile, the corroboration of the Mosaic record is of much greater moment than the discovery of the latitude or longitude of either Ararat.
Them dudes on that palm tree might have been all right for a little bit. Being on a palm tree will float. It'll stay floating for a long time. You know, if you can grab a hold of a palm tree during a flash flood, a tropical flash flood or hurricane flooding, yeah, that might save your life.
Or Eden. The Ashley beds of South Carolina indicate beyond a doubt that the Western Hemisphere once abounded in animal life.
Ooh, I like that they have Zeuglodon. That's the name for Basilosaurus that I wish it had, but due to the way that scientific names are applied, Basilosaurus wins. This is not like surprising information. They're like, oh, look, camels and tapirs and porpoises. What? I thought for a second that said macropod, but it just says Macrops, Tale of a Saurian. Prorozephius. Prorozephius. I think that's probably, the name's probably changed on that, like it's changed on Zeuglodon. Teeth of peccary. Yeah, we still have peccaries in North America. Tiger sharks and tiger shark. Man-eating shark. I guess that's a megalodon. I don't know. Mylodon, which is a giant sloth. Phokodon. Monkeys. Everybody loves monkeys. Cast of periwinkle and conch. Skull of a saurian. This sounds like a witch's brew when I read it out like this. Wearing a ball cap is in a nice restaurant last. Uncouth behavior, I told you. Let me see. My daughter and I had dinner at a nice restaurant last night, and the next table was a typical Midwestern old white guy wearing a MAGA hat. My kid physically held me back from asking him when exactly America was great. Probably when he was a kid, when he has those rose-colored glasses, because I feel that way about the 90s. I look at the 90s and look back at the 90s and I'm like, oh, it was such a great time to be alive. It's, the economy was good and my family was doing good. But that's my own rose-colored glasses. I get that. I understand that. I understand the 90s was horrific for a lot of people for a lot of reasons. And if I had been an adult queer person in the 90s, I probably would have been a little bit more stressed because the way we were treated back then. But I was a kid, so I have this fond memory of it. And the thing is that these America Great Again people cannot differentiate their own rose-colored glasses memories of their childhood and their youth with the reality that existed at that actually at that time. Trump is a great example. He thinks because he grew up in the 50s, and his family was wealthy, so he grew up in a prosperous 50s, the post-war economic boom 50s. And that's what he's referring to. He does not think that that's rose-colored glasses. Trump actually believes that is the world that existed as he remembers it in his childhood. It's really weird, but we all do it, but it's just recognizing when you have your own bias just because of nostalgia, right? I sometimes take the opposite tack with those jerks. Do you mean to imply America isn't the greatest country God ever made, man? Shame them with their own myths. They can't tell fact from fairy tale. Of course, they can't contextualize their own childhood. Right? They think their childhood experience of a time period is objective. That everybody during that time period had that same experience, and it was the best, and it now just can't compare.
Of every variety, that if not originally, yet it had come to be a great center of organic existence at the period of the flood.
See, and that's the thing. D, exactly. My rose-colored glasses of the 90s, we're about the same age. I was born in 83, so is different. Our experience of what the 90s was like is different because of that.
It is not to be expected that a single deposit should contain absolutely the fossil of every species, yet there are few wanting in this huge cemetery of animate creation. So few as to make the supposition that with more time and discovery, all will be found. In Europe, especially northern Siberia, in France, Italy, and England, extensive beds have been found and explored, which determine the common distinction of animals, and man by sudden and overwhelming catastrophe. In the main, they are land animals, amphibious, but they do not contain extinct saurians, sharks, seals, in touch with extinct mammals, a vast fauna of land and water in one bed and in close contact, as we find in these phosphate beds.
Giant what? Hold on. Fortunate discovery in an earth of the skeletal remains of a prehistoric race of stupendous giant baboons. I don't think that they were that big, though. Holy crap, that's like King Kong sized. Natural phosphate from the benefit of the Ashley Phosphate Company, the great promoter of modern civilization and advanced agriculture. I don't think there was ever a baboon with a skull big enough that tiny men could stand on top of it.
With such a history before the flood, a large continent crowded with life in its most active expression, the wonder arises. How came it that presumably
I just turned 35, or just turned 55. Oh, I thought you said you were born in 1984. Sorry. I thought for a second there I was older than you.
nothing remained that both man...
Happy birthday. I played a birthday song for Maya. I guess I could have played a birthday song for D too, but your birthday wasn't on Live from the Hive Day. I guess I could have played it on the transpositions. Now I feel bad.
And beast, the horse and his rider, disappeared. That the slopes of the Atlantic, the prairies of Kansas, the heights of the Rocky Mountains, the pampas of Brazil, the range of the Cordilleras, became as still as death? How was it that this immense wealth of herds and flocks and fishes and huge mammalia disappeared, passed away, without leaving their tracks to tell the story, or cause...
What do you mean without leaving their tracks? We found their remains. What are you talking about? They left their remains. They didn't... Species generally don't snap out of existence in a sudden disaster, right? A good portion of the population can be wiped out in a natural disaster, and then the dwindling populations just can't recover, and over the next few centuries or thousands of years even, millions of years even, they just slowly dwindle down and disappear. It's not that complicated. And then when you have Paleo-Indians showing up on the scene, hunting down the remaining members of the population, hunting them into extinction, that's just the way it goes.
Cause a suspicion of their having once been there. Had the inhabitants which usually attend such animals remained, the story might have came down to us that the horse and the ox...
I like how he's like quoting this book from 1901 by John Keener, who was speculating on how species existed in different continents than where they exist now before plate tectonics was understood. So the arc, they would have to travel on an arc or something, right? Because at that time they didn't realize plate tectonics didn't become a thing until the 1950s. So when Keener was writing this, it was like, yeah, how did ancient horses and rhinoceroses get to North America from if they don't exist there now and they exist in Asia and in Africa, and they must have originated here and been brought from here to the old world on Noah's Ark. Because they didn't understand plate tectonics. Easy peasy.
and the sheep, and the goat once browsed upon these great plains and aided the life of man. Part 3. Time spent at sea. There has long persisted a misconception that Noah's Ark was only at sea for 40 days and 40 nights, which leads some people to assume the Ark did not travel very far. A careful analysis of Genesis, chapters 7 through 8, reveal that Noah spent a minimum of 150 days at sea, by no means a brief voyage. To think that an unmaneuverable ship could have started on dry land in Iraq, Iran, or Syria, only to touch back down in Turkey, the country right next door, after 150 days at sea, is comical to say the least.
Why is that comical? So, with a global flood, right, in mountain ranges, it's going to create gyres that last for decades, not just hours. Gyres that just swirl and swirl. You're not going very far. The global flood, the mountain ranges and the currents and the water, the way the water would pour into the valleys would create endless gyres. So there's been a lot of swirling around. But he's going to make the claim that the Gulf Stream was still the same for some reason.
As the time frame indicates, it is far more likely that the Ark drifted away from the continent on which it departed. We resume from The Garden of Eden and the Flood by John C. Keener, dated 1901. Quote,
And the guy from before there was an understanding of plate tectonics, volcanism, all this complex stuff.
the Ark was lifted up, and, as it is so grandly said, quote, went upon the face of the waters. It started due east. It would presently strike the Gulf Stream, floating on that sea current. It would
Presuming the Gulf Stream existed, because you don't, like, the Gulf Stream doesn't exist in a vacuum. The Gulf Stream exists because the Isthmus of Panama is closed. This little section down here, right here, that's why we have a Gulf Stream, because there used to be a circumglobal current when things were warmer that fed into the Pacific, right? The water would come up from the South Atlantic, and instead of coming in here and hitting a barrier and turning back east, it would go right through here. So what that did was it created really hyper warm and wet southern continents, South America, Africa, and they were warm and wet, and then the northern continents, which were North America, Europe, and Asia. I mean, this contributed to what we call the Ice Age or the glaciation. The glacial maximum was this sucker being open, right? Because no warm tropical waters made their way up into the North Atlantic. So all of this was all frozen. There was a mammoth steppe that ran from here, right? From here all the way west across North America, Asia, all the way to here. A whole environment that camels and horses, bovids and pachyderms of all shapes and sizes traversed from east to west, from west to east, when the buried land bridge was above sea level. But the Gulf Stream wouldn't have existed prior to that. The Gulf Stream wouldn't exist if everything was underwater.
take a northerly direction until it reached the 40th parallel, and then would go due east. And as so,
under the current currents, under the current currents and the formation of land masses and bodies of water, mountain ranges, and all that stuff. Yeah, that's where things get hung up. The 40th parallel, where things get in the Atlantic, where things get kicked back east, which the sailors during the Ages of Exploration were always taken advantage of, because what you do is when you're leaving, you navigate southwest towards like the Canaries, and it'll bring you into a current just above the equator that'll take you right into the Lesser Antilles. And when you're heading back east, You go north up the American coast till you hit that 40th parallel, and then it just shoots you right on back towards the Mediterranean.
So many a helpless craft since would come within sight of Spain and Africa. But those coasts being submerged, there could be nothing to deflect the current, but it would pass over the plateaus of Spain, into the Mediterranean, across the lower part of Greece, then over the plains of Asia Minor, and still holding the same parallel, strike Mount Ararat. The distance from Charleston to Mount Ararat is 131 degrees.
Why wouldn't it strike the Alps? Those are between it and Turkey, and they're taller than Mount Ararat. I think the mountains of what's the mountain range in North Africa called? The Atlas Mountains. Yeah, I think the Atlases are taller than Ararat too.
Degrees of latitude, or 8,000.
Maybe it was channeled between those two mountain ranges.
1,515 miles. The time the Ark was on the water was 150 days, or 3,600 hours. Off Cape...
You're depending on the Gulf Stream having the same properties under those flood conditions, and it just wouldn't. Like, the physics don't even make sense that you're claiming here.
Hatteras. The Gulf Stream has a velocity of 2.5 miles an hour. This would leave very little to be overcome, if anything, when we allow for the uninterrupted flow, which the current then had. It is not likely that animals would be landed in any other than the latitude to which they were accustomed. They would determine the direction of the Ark. The pathway of the Ark, under this supposition, had a blessing in it. Between the 30th and the 40th parallels have sprung the great philosophers, warriors, statesmen, and discoverers of the race.
So, yeek. Basically just making a mighty whitey claim there that people from between the 30th and 40th parallel are best, which is Europeans and Middle Eastern people, of course, but yeah, white people. Dr. Dino, aloha, Nerdita. How is it going? I finally got my butt in gear and got a new video done. Yay! Yay! The great dinosaur discoverer here. I don't want to spill any beans, but Dr. Dino has been making quite the splash on the paleontological scene here of late.
End quote. We resume from In the Beginning by L.V. Edison Callaway.
More Callaway. Here we go. Now, Callaway was the guy that we listened to talk earlier about that he was insistent that Noah's Ark was built in northwestern Florida.
Quote, "The waters prevailed upon the earth 150 days." Genesis chapter 7, verse 28. The ark did not have any propelling power. It just floated or drifted with the wind or atmosphere for 150 days and nights. Quote, "God made a wind to pass over the earth."
But you're just assuming that, that the currents and everything are going to be the same.
Genesis chapter 8, verse 1. We know from a teleological, scientific standpoint that cannot be refuted that there is an eastward drift of the wind or atmosphere from Bristol, Liberty County, Florida, to Mount Ararat in Armenia. We know from a teleos certainty that this drift of the atmosphere,
with the current position of the continental land masses, again, these people were writing these propositions before we understood plate tectonics. I'm really quiet. Did my mic drop? Let me see. No, not that. More volume settings. Yeah, it's way low. Turn it up. That should be a lot better. Matter of fact, that's a little loud.
is what causes the changes in our seasons. We know from a teleos certainty the normal rate of travel or speed of the drift of that wind or atmosphere. We know the distance from Bristol, Florida, to Mount Ararat. We know the exact size of the ark in length, breadth, and height. We know from a teleos mathematical certainty.
But why do all the depictions show different shapes? That last one was good. It was a square, or not square, rectangle, I guess I should say. I keep saying square, I mean rectangle. Whereas this is the boat-shaped one.
Just how fast an ark of that size would have drifted or traveled within the atmosphere within 150 days and night. We know from a teleos mathematical certainty that it would have traveled, and in fact did travel, from Bristol, Florida, to Mount Ararat in Armenia during the 150 days and nights that it was afloat. Noah and his family did not know they had landed on Mount Ararat, so far from their original home in Liberty County, Florida.
See, Georgia, Florida. Noah was a Florida man. What do you say? Teleologically, Noah was a Florida man.
They thought they had been drifting around over the mountains of the southern Appalachians.
Noah thought he was still in Appalachia. He thought he was, but he wasn't.
That was why they called some of the rivers near where they landed by the names of the rivers they had known in this country as Gihon, Hiddekel, and Euphrates. That was why they called some of the areas near where they landed by the names of the areas they had known in this country, such as Assyria, Ethiopia, etc. That is what has confused so many Bible students.
Wait a second. Are you saying Ethiopia's in North America too? I hope so.
Did not have the teleos key in interpreting it. That is why they have assumed that it happened over there. If the ark had been built anywhere in or near the area in Western Asia, as had been falsely assumed or supposed for such a long time, it would have been an utter impossibility for the ark to have landed on Mount Ararat. It would have drifted with wind or atmosphere during the 150 days,
which you assume is going to be the same in flood conditions, which is quite ridiculous. Imagine that once the whole world is covered with water, the equator, not the 40th, is going to become the prominent current on the globe, right? That's just going to be how it is. That once you get all the land masses and continents and mountain ranges out of the way, and given a very short amount of time, no doubt, that the current would centralize at the equator.
And nights that it was afloat, thousands of miles east, and could not have landed on Mount Ararat. Many people have asked, well, if the ark...
Ooh, Appalachia. I didn't even think about that, and that's where the forbidden fruit was from. Maybe the forbidden fruit was an Osage orange.
Really landed on Mount Ararat. Why hasn't someone found it, or parts of it? They never stopped to realize that the ark was built of wood, and that Noah and his sons needed wood to build new homes and other buildings after they landed, and that the most natural thing...
I think that once the whatever the Gopherwood stuff that they put on it hardened, wouldn't... Because I'm assuming that because they talk about like being a pitch, like something they're putting over the top of it. Once that set, would you be able to rebuild with that material?
For them to have done would have been to dismantle the ark and use the lumber for other purposes. I have laughed at the expeditions headed by so-called intelligent men, going to try to find the ark. Many ships built out of wood, thousands of years since the ark was built, have been dismantled, and the wood used for other purposes, so that no trace can be found of them. But as heretofore stated, it appears that the ark has been found on Mount Ararat. End quote.
Let's see. Ember's got some input here. Oh, he thinks Eden was... Okay, we talked about that. It's all coming together, says Deep Arcs. The gas giant planets show us how fluid currents work when there aren't interruptions. It could have been an orange. Those fruits are responsible for Ocala burning to the ground twice. So clearly cursed.
Part 4.
Part
The
4.
Saxor Stones.
You ready for some Saxor
The Book of
stones?
Genesis does not afford us the details to determine for sure whether or not Noah's Ark was maneuverable, but serious biblical archaeologists are nearly unanimous in asserting that it was not. There is, however, a general consensus that a large wooden vessel, 450 feet or more in length, would have required the use of stone anchors, perhaps...
All right, hold on. Let's do this real quick. There's a lot more to go through here than I was anticipating. Okay, so Saxor stones. A tireless prophet with salt and pepper beard and an inviting grin, John Saxor, knows that mainstream archaeologists, journalists, and folks in Tarpon Springs think he's nuts. They reject his Greek mythology and archaeology-based theories that Tarpon Springs is the center of the biblical Garden of Eden and the Tampa Bay area coastline was the seaports of Atlantis. So if you're in Tampa, you're not just in Eden, you're also in Atlantis. It's been a tough sell, acknowledges Saxor, a 55-year-old bicycle mechanic and bartender who was homeless for much of 2004. Saxor has been ignored by archaeologists nationwide for the past 18 months, despite offering evidence of what he claims are 6,500-year-old stone arc anchors abundant on land near shoreline in Newport Richey, Holiday, and Tarpon Springs. It gets scary when you're in the front of the field, said Saxor, an amateur archaeologist since his college days at the University of Wisconsin. You don't want to be out there alone. You start questioning yourself. Last week, Saxor, this is from 2006, by the way. Last week, Saxor had a breakthrough. He found a believer, the type he had sought for years, an archaeologist with credentials and financial backing. Bill Donato, 55, a Californian archaeologist known for his underwork near the Bahamas as Association of Research and Enlightenment, came here to study Saxor's finding. This is like the Bimini Road guy. The maverick archaeologist was lured by pictures of the stones Saxor sent him and Saxor's telephone descriptions. I don't believe any of the Garden of Eden theories or most of John's views of Atlantis, which I did my master's thesis on, Donato said before his trip here. I'm interested because the pictures are similar to anchors found in Bimini last year and to 5,000-year-old finds in the Middle East. Finally, Saxor has found an expert willing to study the stones, which range in size from fragments light enough to be held to rocks with multiple holes weighing more than a ton. He's the best I could have found. I commend him for thinking outside the box, Saxor said. I wanted a team of archaeologists, but a lot more knowledgeable than me to study the undeniable evidence and make their own conclusions. Undeniable evidence. You sounds like you're real open-minded.
It's more accurately termed as drogue stones. Prior to the advent of the metal boat anchor, stone anchors were used by every single seafaring civilization known to man, especially the Phoenicians and other Semitic seafarers.
You mean the idea of tying your boat to a rock is ancient? And a rock with a hole in it would be the best way to do that, to tie a rope to it. This all sound like just common things that multiple people around the world could come up with on their own.
They were frequently crafted from limestone or flint, and typically featured one or more holes bored through them. But rocks with no holes could also be fastened with rope, or were used as ballast stones.
Mm-hmm.
One of the greatest evidences for Noah's Ark having landed on or near Mount Ararat is the presence of megalithic drogue stones in that area. A drogue or storm drogue is a device trailed behind a boat in order to stabilize, maintain course, and prevent from turning broadside. Frequently deployed in rough conditions.
And your claim is that this is something that could only be created and deployed by one civilization.
At sea. In a National Geographic documentary, which has almost been entirely scrubbed from the internet, researchers set out to scientifically test the Noah's Ark narrative. Perhaps the climax of the entire production was an experiment in which a scaled-down model of Noah's Ark was tested in a wave pool, simulating a tumultuous global flooding event. The experiment clearly showed that without stone anchors or storm drogues, the ship quickly succumbed to the turbulent sea. But when the researchers tested the Ark with drogue stones attached, the Ark was able to withstand everything that the wave generator threw at it.
So this reminds me of when we talked about the, what was it, the little bird that they said, oh, this was definitely a flying airplane model. And they tested it in the wind tunnels and stuff.
The results indicated that the Ark's voyage could only have been feasible if drogestones were deployed. As indicated earlier,
I guess this guy doesn't know about the heat problem. If you want to talk about issues that impacting the Ark, the heat problem.
hundreds of cultures around the world have flood myths which closely mirror the account of Noah's Ark given in the Bible. Perhaps the earliest of these is contained within the Epic of Gilgamesh, a Sumerian epic considered to be the oldest written story ever, dated to around 2700 BC. In this account, it is said that a series of stone things, which are widely believed to be stone anchors or drogestones, were needed to cross the so-called waters of death. It is possible.
Finally, you mentioned the Epic of Gilgamesh, but the whole time you skipped over talking about Utnapishtim, and it's really weird that you were like, oh, well, you said magic with the K, which makes me think that you're pagan. Maybe you're not, or maybe you're Assyrian pagan. I don't know, but even if you were Assyrian pagan, you think that Utnapishtim would be the name you used instead of Noah. Noah, it'd be like the Church of England saying that they had to start calling Jesus Jesus, right? It's just doesn't line up culturally.
The Epic of Gilgamesh, which is believed by many to be the inspiration or a regional variation of the biblical flood myth itself, could fill in some of the gaps left out.
Or is the biblical flood myth a retelling of the Epic of Gilgamesh? Why are you inverting that when one tale is objectively older than the other
in the Bible? It just so happens that Florida is the location for the largest collection of ancient megalithic ship anchors in the world. These are known as the Saxor stones and are the focus of numerous videos of mine, mostly in relation to the fleet of Atlantis.
The fleet of Atlantis. Fuck yeah, the fleet of Atlantis. Let's do it.
The man for whom these anchors were named points out there is a great similarity between the story of Noah's Ark and the Greek myth of Atlantis. L.V. Edison.
Some of these holes can be created naturally. So I'm not saying all of them are by any means, but there are definitely processes by which holes are bored through stones like limestone and what's the volcanic rock called that's really soft? Cursed. I think we talked about it in the blue hole section, but yeah, we know water can bore holes.
Callaway and John C. Keener made no mention of Florida's ancient stone anchors, so it is safe to assume that they were unaware of them. Despite this, the presence of megalithic stone anchors in Florida provides some of the most tangible evidence to date in the survey.
See, like that one looks more natural. This one right here. The one the guy's leaning on, obviously, is people have been working this stone for a while. There's all these crosses carved into it.
Noah's Ark and the lost fleet of Atlantis.
Fleet of Atlantis. Some of these could have been ancient sex toys. Just saying. They even have dates on them. Look, 500 BC to 1500 AD. 500, 1500. Yeah, they're even dated. All of them younger than your alleged flood. But the fact that you think that native populations in Florida couldn't have invented drogstones, I disagree. They invented a lot of things. They invented wheels. Native Americans had wheels. So, like, whatever. I knew it was going to stick his head in that hole, right? Hello, Entropy fan. Good to see ya. Good to see ya, everybody. We're looking at these holes. Look at all these holes. Today's episode I thought was going to be Florida heavy, but it's just been hole heavy. Do you have a hole? Is it blue? Then we're going to talk about Leska. Is it stone? Then we're going to talk about Noah, Florida man.
Part 5. For those in denial.
Those in denial, like me, I'm in denial.
As mentioned earlier, it is rather common for people to assume that the flood reshaped the surface of the Earth completely, meaning none of the continents extant before the flood even exist today, and vice versa. If this assumption is true, then the Garden of Eden still could not have been in the Middle East, and Florida is as good a guess as any. Regardless, those who make such...
Florida is as good a guess as any. No, it's not. It's really not. You've totally whitewashed Florida's history. Florida's paleo history, too. I mean... and I guess that would be history, prehistory, Paleolithic prehistory. You've just whitewashed over it with Atlantis and Bible nonsense, ignoring the fact that there were cultures and societies that grew here and developed here and had their own mythology and languages that you're just glossing over and circling the ones that the words that you of this language and that language that you think line up.
An assumption must account for evidence like the underwater cypress forests in the Gulf of Mexico, dating back to a time when sea levels were 400 feet lower. The experts tell us that these trees grew above water 60,000 years ago.
Okay.
Though I agree that we should never put all our eggs in a single basket by relying on academically proposed timelines, the depth at which these cypress trees are found certainly predates the extinction of the mammoth and mastodon by many thousands of years.
Yeah.
Hurricane season has taught most Floridians that the bottom of the pool is the calmest part during a storm. The suspiciously acronymed NOAA, the National Oceanic...
Suspiciously named. Look at this. Now we're getting into some real woo here. Look, they turn it upside down. You got an arc on top of a mountain.
Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, even concurs that the floor of the ocean is likely the safest place to be when a tsunami strikes at sea. It is safe to assume that so long as the Gulf Stream has existed, the freshwater springs of Florida have served as its primary source. The magnitude with which the springs in Florida flow could have quickly flushed...
Are we into blue holes again? How did we get back here? Floridian aquifer.
...away most of the sediment deposited by the flood, leaving the Florida peninsula very similar to its pre-Diluvian form. It could also be argued that the flood was a more localized event than is commonly supposed, in which a low-lying homeland, such as Florida, was quickly consumed by the sea, after which the Ark's voyage ensued, later landing near Mount Ararat, which may or may not have remained dry. Those who assume that the Earth was entirely reshaped by the flood must also explain how it is that Mount Ararat was already there, standing tall, ready to receive the...
Would it have been a new mountain, though? And why is Ararat the first land that was exposed, not the taller mountains in between, like the Alps and the Atlas Mountains that Noah would have traveled between those two ranges, to get to the ancient Near East. To get to Turkey, you have to go from Florida. You have to go between the Alps and the Atlas Mountains. You just have to.
Ark, and it is not even the tallest mountain on earth. Genesis chapter 7, verse 19 through 20, only tells us that, quote, the waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth, and all the high hills that were under the whole heaven were covered. 15 cubits upward did the waters prevail, and the mountains were covered, end quote. Mm-hmm. Notice that all the high hills were covered.
You gotta love how he uses the King James Version, too. That's the most accurate version of the Bible, right?
But when it comes to mountains, it simply tells us that the mountains were covered. Not all or every, just the mountains. It is a well-known fact that both the Old and New Testament effectively make use of hyperbole, and there is a chance that this is one of those instances. Then,
I'll agree with you there that the flood story is likely based around local flood mythology. At least the Utnapishtim story is.
Again, the fossilized remains of marine life can be found atop Mount Everest. Well, as John C. Keener puts it, quote, the breaking up of the deep, etc., at the time of the deluge, would not necessarily imply any very great change in the conformation of the continents, nor in the sea currents. We must also remember that the Lord, at the creation, had in view the possibility of the flood, as well as of the fall, and arranged accordingly. End quote.
Again, John Keener existed before we understood plate tectonics. Should have brought your hip boots, yeah? That would have worked. Ark encounter, yeah, of course. Let's look at Ken Ham's baby. And they tried to put like a petting zoo in here, but they couldn't ventilate it properly to have even a small petting zoo inside this ark.
Here are a couple of ways you can support the channel.
I don't think so. I'm not supporting the channel. Well, you know what I will do? I will subscribe because you're quirky. You got some wild ideas, and I want to hear about your fleet of Atlantis at some point. 62,000 subscribers on this channel, though. Thank you, Dr. Longo. Is that what his name is, Dr. Longo? My dad grew up in Florida. I was born and raised in West Virginia. I visited when I was 3 and have no recollection, but I have visited multiple times as an adult, and I feel at home, feeling to me personally. It makes sense why I feel at peace there. And people just believe it. Like, yeah, what this guy says is true. What he says is true, and we should all believe him. Crazy. All right, what do you guys think? What do you guys think about Noah's Ark being built in Florida? What do you all think about Noah being the Florida man? Let me know in the comments below. And remember to be kind, take care, and we will see you next time.